The wedding dress hung loose on Tasha Bennett's shoulders, clearly made for someone smaller. Someone who should have been standing here instead of her. Her hands trembled as she clutched the bouquet of white roses, their thorns digging into her palm through the thin silk of her borrowed gloves. The church stretched before her like a tunnel with no end, filled with strangers who whispered behind their programs. At the altar stood Julian Blackwell, the blind billionaire CEO whose name made stock markets tremble and business rivals sweat. His dark suit fit him perfectly, tailored to emphasize broad shoulders and a lean frame. His face could have been carved from marble, beautiful and completely expressionless. Dark glasses hid his eyes and he stood perfectly still, his head turned slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. Tasha's feet refused to move forward. This morning she'd been packing for her new job in Seattle, ready to start over away from her demanding family. Then her mother had burst through the door, mascara running, voice shrill with panic. Tasha's younger sister Brittany had run away. The arranged marriage, the business deal between families, the contract that would save the Bennett company from bankruptcy, everything was about to collapse. "You have to take her place," her mother had said, not asked. "We'll lose everything. Your father will go to prison for the debts. Do you want that on your conscience?" Now, walking down the aisle toward a stranger, Tasha wondered if there was any choice that wouldn't destroy someone. The organ music swelled, pushing her forward step by reluctant step. Julian Blackwell didn't turn toward the sound of her approach. He simply waited, patient as a statue, while Tasha's entire future narrowed to this single point. The officiant began speaking, words that should have been romantic but sounded like a business transaction. Julian's voice was deep and smooth when he spoke his vows, completely devoid of emotion. When it came time for Tasha to respond, her voice cracked on the first word. "I do," she whispered, and felt the weight of those words settle over her like chains. Julian's hand found hers with surprising accuracy when it came time to exchange rings. His fingers were warm, steady, and completely impersonal. He slid a platinum band onto her finger without fumbling, as if he'd memorized the exact distance and angle. Then it was done. The officiant pronounced them married, and Julian turned his head toward where she stood. "We can go now," he said quietly. His first words to her as her husband were a dismissal. The reception was worse than the ceremony. Tasha sat at the head table in her borrowed dress, watching Julian's business associates offer congratulations that felt more like condolences. No one spoke to her directly. They addressed Julian, talking over and around her as if she were invisible. "Shame about the Bennett girl running off," one older man said loud enough for Tasha to hear. "But I suppose one sister is as good as another for this kind of arrangement." Julian's jaw tightened, the first expression she'd seen cross his face. "My wife's name is Tasha," he said quietly. The table fell silent. "Please use it." The words should have felt protective, but his tone was ice cold. Tasha realized he was angry about the situation too, trapped in this marriage just as much as she was. She'd heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. Julian Blackwell had been engaged to someone he loved before the accident that took his sight. That woman had left him within a month of his injury, unable to handle his transformation from charming playboy to cold, isolated businessman. He'd built walls after that. His company thrived under his leadership, his business instincts somehow sharper without sight. But personally, he'd become known for his frozen demeanor, his refusal of help, and his absolute insistence on independence. People called him the Ice King behind his back. And now Tasha was married to him. The reception ended early. Julian's assistant, a efficient woman named Patricia, approached their table. "The car is ready, Mr. Blackwell." Julian stood with fluid grace, and Patricia's hand moved toward his elbow. He stepped smoothly away from the gesture before contact was made. "I can manage," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "He couldn't though." Tasha watched him pause, orienting himself by sound. She stood quickly, her chair scraping against the floor. Julian's head turned toward the noise. "The door is 10 steps forward and 3 to your left," Tasha said softly. She'd been watching the room's layout all evening, nervous energy making her count distances and memorize paths. "There's a waiter with a tray at 7 steps." Julian's expression didn't change, but he moved forward with more confidence. He navigated around the waiter exactly as she described and reached the door without incident. Tasha followed, wondering if she'd just made things better or worse. How could anyone expect love to grow from such a cold beginning? Could you survive a marriage that started as a business deal? Drop a comment below with your thoughts and please subscribe to see how this story unfolds. The car ride to Julian's estate was silent. Tasha sat on one side of the spacious back seat while Julian occupied the other, as far apart as possible. The city lights flickered past the windows, and Tasha tried not to think about everything she'd left behind. Her apartment, her job offer, her chance at independence, all gone in a single morning. The Bennett family would be saved, though. Her father's company would survive. Her mother would keep her country club membership and her social standing. And Brittany, wherever she'd run to, was free to live her own life. Tasha was the sacrifice that made it all possible. The car turned through massive iron gates and up a long tree-lined driveway. Julian's mansion rose before them, all glass and stone and modern angles. Lights blazed from every window, making the place look more like a museum than a home. "Welcome to your new residence, Mrs. Blackwell," the driver said as he opened her door. Mrs. Blackwell. The name felt foreign, like clothes that belonged to someone else. Tasha stepped out and looked up at the enormous house, wondering which room would be her prison. Julian exited the car on his own, refusing the driver's offered assistance. He stood for a moment, his face turned toward the mansion. Tasha wondered what he was sensing. The cooling evening air? The sound of the fountain in the circular driveway? The presence of the home he could no longer see? "Patricia will show you to your room," Julian said without preamble. "We'll discuss the arrangements tomorrow." He walked toward the front door, moving carefully but with determination. His hand found the railing beside the steps and he climbed them one at a time. Tasha watched him disappear inside, leaving her standing alone in the driveway with his assistant. "This way, Mrs. Blackwell," Patricia said, her voice professionally neutral. "I'll give you a tour of the main floor, then take you to the guest wing." Guest wing. Not Julian's wing. Not even the same part of the house. Tasha felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. She'd married a man who didn't want her anywhere near him. Inside, the mansion was as cold and beautiful as its owner. Everything was modern, expensive, and absolutely spotless. Patricia walked through rooms with practiced efficiency, pointing out the kitchen, the dining room, the library, Julian's office. "Mr. Blackwell requires absolute order," Patricia explained. "Nothing can be moved or changed without his knowledge. He's memorized the location of every piece of furniture, every door, every step." "That must have taken a long time," Tasha said. 2 years, Patricia replied. "Since the accident. He refuses to use a cane or accept guidance. He rebuilt his entire world from memory and sound." There was respect in her voice and something else. Pity maybe. Or sadness. They climbed a sweeping staircase to the second floor. Patricia led her down a long hallway to a door at the far end. "You're sweet," she said, opening the door to reveal a beautiful bedroom done in soft blues and grays. "Mr. Blackwell's rooms are in the east wing. This is the west wing. As far apart as possible while still being in the same building. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed that connects to the kitchen and my office," Patricia continued. "Breakfast is at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 7 in the evening. Mr. Blackwell prefers to dine alone, but you're welcome to eat in the breakfast room." Tasha looked around the beautiful, impersonal room that was now hers. "Thank you," she managed. Patricia paused at the door. "Mrs. Blackwell? I know this isn't what you expected. But Mr. Blackwell isn't cruel. He's just protecting himself. Give him time." Then she was gone and Tasha was alone in her new life. She sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the borrowed wedding dress, and tried to remember the last time someone had asked her what she wanted. Not what her family needed. Not what would save the company. Not what would solve everyone else's problems. What Tasha wanted. The answer came easily: she wanted to matter to someone. She wanted to be chosen, not settled for. She wanted a marriage built on more than obligation and family debt. She wanted what she'd just vowed to honor, this marriage to Julian Blackwell, to somehow become real. Looking around the cold, perfect room, Tasha made a decision. She couldn't change how this marriage started. She couldn't undo her sister's abandonment or her family's manipulation or Julian's obvious resentment. But she could choose how she moved forward. Tomorrow she would start trying to build something from these frozen foundations. Not by forcing her presence on Julian, but by showing him the same thing she wished someone would show her: basic human kindness. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all she had. Tasha finally stood and found the closet. Someone had already moved in clothes from her apartment, her modest wardrobe looking lost in the huge space. She changed into her own pajamas, grateful to be out of the borrowed dress. Then she climbed into the enormous bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the silence of her new home. Somewhere in the East Wing, Julian Blackwell was probably doing the same thing. Two strangers, married and miserable, lying awake in separate rooms of the same house. It was, Tasha thought as exhaustion finally pulled her towards sleep, the loneliest feeling in the world. Morning came too early, announced by weak sunlight filtering through curtains Tasha didn't remember closing. For a confused moment she didn't know where she was. Then memory crashed back. The wedding, Julian's cold voice, this beautiful prison of a room. Tasha's phone showed dozens of missed calls from her mother. She silenced it without listening to the voicemails. Whatever her mother wanted could wait. Probably wanted to know if Julian had discovered the substitution, if he was angry, if their deal was in danger. Her family's concern began and ended with their own security. She showered and dressed in jeans and a simple green sweater, then stood at her door for a full minute before opening it. The hallway stretched empty in both directions. Somewhere in this massive house, her husband was starting his day. The thought made her stomach flutter nervously. The kitchen was easy to find by following the smell of coffee. An older woman in a blue uniform looked up from the stove with a warm smile. "You must be Mrs. Blackwell. I'm Helen, the cook. What can I get you for breakfast?" "Just coffee, please. And you can call me Tasha." Helen's smile widened. "Coffee and toast coming up, Tasha. Mr. Blackwell already ate at 6 and went to his office. He keeps early hours." Tasha accepted the coffee gratefully. "Does he eat in the office?" "Every morning. Has his breakfast on a tray, reads his emails, starts working before the rest of the world wakes up." Helen paused, measuring her words carefully. "He works very hard. Sometimes I think too hard." "Reading emails?" Tasha asked. "But I thought." "Computer reads them aloud," Helen explained. "Same with documents. He's got all kinds of technology to help, though he won't admit he needs help with anything else." She shook her head fondly. "Stubborn man." After breakfast, Tasha wandered the first floor, trying to memorize the layout. Everything was precisely arranged. No clutter, no personal touches, nothing out of place. She understood why now. Julian had memorized this space, built a mental map he could navigate in darkness. Moving anything would disorient him. She found him in his office, door slightly ajar. Tasha paused outside listening. A computer voice read aloud from what sounded like a contract, the cadence fast and mechanical. Then Julian's voice, speaking clearly, "Send response to Chen. Terms acceptable with the modification to Clause 7 as discussed." Message sent, a different computer voice confirmed. Tasha knocked softly on the doorframe. The reading stopped immediately. "Come in." Julian's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. She entered slowly, describing her movements out of instinct. "It's Tasha. I'm coming through the door, heading toward the chairs in front of your desk." "I know it's you." Was that amusement in his tone? "Your footsteps are lighter than Patricia's, and you wear a different perfume than Helen." Tasha sat in one of the leather chairs, hyper-aware of every sound she made. Julian sat behind an enormous desk, his posture perfect, his dark glasses hiding his eyes. His hands rested on the desk surface, long fingers completely still. "We should discuss the terms of this arrangement," he said without preamble. "You'll have access to accounts for personal expenses and household management. You're free to go anywhere, do anything you wish. I won't restrict your activities." "That's generous." Tasha tried to keep her voice steady. "It's practical. This marriage is a business arrangement. You fulfilled your family's obligation by showing up yesterday. You're entitled to compensation for that." His tone was matter-of-fact, as if they were discussing a contract rather than their lives. "I assume you'll want to pursue your own interests. Patricia can help you set up anything you need." "And you?" Tasha asked. "What do you need from this arrangement?" Julian's fingers tapped once on the desk. "Nothing. I need nothing from you except discretion. The world thinks this is a real marriage. We'll maintain that fiction in public. In private, you're free to live your own life." The words should have been a relief. Instead, they felt like a door slamming shut. "I see. Do you?" Julian leaned back slightly. "Most people in your position would be happy with this arrangement. A comfortable life, financial security, personal freedom. No expectations or demands. Most people didn't stand at an altar yesterday and promise to honor someone," Tasha said quietly. "I know I wasn't your choice. I know you're angry about how this happened. But I'm here now, and I'd like to at least try to make this bearable for both of us." Silence stretched between them. Julian's face remained expressionless, but his fingers had stilled completely on the desk. Finally he spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "Bearable. That's a low bar." "It's honest." Tasha leaned forward. "I won't pretend this is a fairy tale. But I also won't pretend we're strangers who happen to share an address. We're married. That means something to me even if it doesn't to you. You don't know anything about me. The words came out sharp. I know you drink black coffee at 6 in the morning. I know you're brilliant at business and stubborn about accepting help. I know you've built an entire life around compensating for your blindness instead of acknowledging it. Tasha paused. I know you're lonely. Julian stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Patricia will help you with whatever you need. I have work to do. It was a clear dismissal, but Tasha didn't move. I'm not going anywhere, Julian. Not just geographically. I mean, I'm not going to disappear into the West Wing and pretend you don't exist. I'm your wife. I'm going to act like it. Why? The question came out harsh. You don't owe me anything. You were forced into this just like I was. Because kindness doesn't require a reason. Tasha stood, smoothing her hands over her jeans. And because someone should have shown you that before now. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding. She'd probably made things worse. But she'd also told the truth, and that had to count for something. The rest of the day Tasha explored the house more thoroughly. She found the library on the second floor, filled with books that looked untouched since Julian's accident. In the corner sat a piano, its surface dusty. She ran her fingers over the keys, making them whisper soft notes into the silence. Do you play? Patricia's voice made her jump. A little. My grandmother taught me when I was young. Tasha closed the piano lid gently. Does Julian come in here? Not anymore. He used to spend hours in this room before the accident. Patricia looked around sadly. He played the piano beautifully. Composed his own pieces sometimes. But after he lost his sight he stopped. Said music reminded him of everything he'd lost. That evening Tasha ate dinner alone in the breakfast room. Helen brought her roasted chicken and vegetables, chatting about the garden and the upcoming season. It was comfortable, pleasant even. But Tasha found herself listening for footsteps, wondering where Julian was, what he was doing. She found out at 9 o'clock when she heard raised voices from the direction of Julian's office. Concerned, she moved closer. Through the partially open door she could see Julian on his feet, facing someone she didn't recognize. The offer is insulting, Julian said, his voice cold enough to freeze water. Tell Hammond if he thinks my blindness makes me desperate, he's about to learn an expensive lesson. He's offering 40% above market value, the other man argued. You should at least consider it. I don't need to consider anything. The company is not for sale at any price. Julian's hands were clenched at his sides. Now get out. The man left, brushing past Tasha without seeming to see her. Julian remained standing, his chest rising and falling with angry breaths. He's wrong, Tasha said softly from the doorway. Julian's head snapped toward her voice. How long have you been standing there? Long enough to hear someone underestimate you. She stepped into the office. He thinks you're vulnerable because you can't see. He doesn't understand that you've already adapted to bigger challenges than anything he could throw at you. You don't know what you're talking about. But Julian's voice had lost some of its edge. Maybe not about business. But I know about being underestimated. Tasha moved closer, careful to announce her movement. My whole life people assumed I was less than my sister. Less pretty, less charming, less worthy of attention. They were wrong about me. And that man is wrong about you. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprising her completely, he asked, What are you doing right now? Standing about 6 feet from your desk, wondering if you're going to throw me out too. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, there and gone so quickly she almost missed it. I'm going to review some contracts. The computer will read them aloud. You're welcome to stay if you want. Or not. It's boring work. It was the closest thing to an invitation she'd received. Tasha sat down in the same chair from that morning. I like boring. For the next 2 hours she sat silently while Julian worked. The computer voice read contracts, Julian dictated responses, and the artificial voice confirmed his commands. Tasha watched him, seeing past the cold exterior to the focused intelligence beneath. He was meticulous, catching details others would miss, thinking 3 steps ahead of every negotiation. You're staring, Julian said without warning. I can hear the difference in your breathing when you're looking at me versus looking away. Tasha felt her cheeks heat. Sorry? I was just thinking you're very good at this. At what? Running your company. Making decisions. All of it. That man was wrong. You're not vulnerable. You're probably sharper now than you were before. Julian's hands stilled on the keyboard. Why would you say that? Because you have to work harder to process information. You can't skim a document or glance at a face to read intentions. You have to really listen, really think. That's made you better, not worse. Tasha stood, suddenly embarrassed by her honesty. Good night, Julian. Tasha. His voice stopped her at the door. Thank you. For staying. It wasn't much. But it was something. And Tasha fell asleep that night in the West Wing feeling, for the first time since the wedding, like maybe this marriage wouldn't always feel like a prison sentence. Maybe it could become something else. Something neither of them expected. Over the next week, Tasha settled into a rhythm. She woke early, had coffee with Helen in the kitchen, then spent her mornings quietly observing the house and its routines. Julian kept to his schedule with military precision. Office at 6, lunch in his study at noon, business calls in the afternoon, dinner alone at 7. But small things began to change. On the third day, Tasha noticed Julian pause at the top of the stairs, his hand hovering over the railing. She'd been reading in the upstairs sitting room and watched him count steps under his breath before descending. He made it down safely, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the careful placement of each foot. The next morning she went to his office before he arrived. I'm going to describe something to you, she said when he entered. The main staircase has 15 steps. The railing is on the right side going down. But there's a seam in the carpet on step 7 that's starting to lift. Caught my shoe yesterday. I told Patricia to have it fixed, but I thought you should know. Julian stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. You're checking my house for hazards? I'm noticing things that could be problems. There's a difference. Is there? But he didn't sound angry. More curious. Yes. One treats you like you're helpless. The other treats you like you're a person who might appreciate relevant information. Tasha gathered her book from his desk. The carpet will be fixed this afternoon. She left before he could respond. But that evening as she passed his office, Julian called out, "Thank you." For the stairs. Small victories. By the end of the week, Tasha had fallen into a habit of visiting Julian's office in the evenings. She'd bring a book and read silently while he worked. He never asked her to leave. Sometimes he'd finish early and they'd talk, brief conversations about neutral topics. The weather. Something Helen had cooked. A news story the computer had read to him. Nothing personal. Nothing deep. But it was communication and Tasha treasured every word. On Friday evening, Patricia burst into the office looking frazzled. Mr. Blackwell, I'm so sorry. My daughter just called. Her baby is sick and I need to take her to the hospital. I know you have the Richardson presentation tomorrow morning, and I haven't finished formatting the slides. Go. Julian's voice was firm. Family comes first. We'll manage the presentation. But the slides need charts and the data has to be formatted specifically for the screen reader, and... Patricia wrung her hands. I'll do it, Tasha said. Everyone turned toward her. Tell me what needs to be done. I have a background in data analysis. I can format spreadsheets and create charts. Patricia looked at Julian, who had gone very still. Sir? A long pause. Tasha held her breath, waiting for him to refuse. To insist he didn't need help, that he could manage alone, that she should mind her own business. Instead, Julian said quietly, Tasha, do you actually know how to create accessible presentations? I can learn. Show me what you need and I'll figure it out. Another pause. Then, Patricia, send Tasha the files and the formatting guide. Go take care of your daughter. After Patricia left, Julian sat back in his chair. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Tasha pulled the chair closer to his desk. Send me the files. I'll work on them here so you can check them. They worked until midnight. Julian explained what he needed, specific color contrast for the screen reader to process, alt text for every image, data formatted in particular ways. Tasha absorbed the information quickly, asking questions when she wasn't sure. Slowly the presentation took shape. Read the chart data back to me, Julian requested. Tasha did and he caught 2 errors immediately. The third quarter numbers are reversed. She fixed them, amazed at his memory. How do you keep all this in your head? Practice. When you can't glance at a screen to check something, you learn to be certain before you commit. He rolled his shoulders, easing tension. What time is it? 1:15 midnight. We should stop. You must be exhausted. Tasha saved the file. I'm fine. Are you hungry? I could ask Helen to leave something for us. She already did. There's always food in the kitchen refrigerator, labeled with instructions. Julian stood, stretching. Come on. I'll show you. She followed him down to the kitchen, fascinated by the way he moved through the dark house. He counted steps under his breath, trailed his fingers along walls to orient himself, and navigated with quiet confidence. In the kitchen he went directly to the refrigerator and pulled out 2 covered plates. "Bottom shelf left side," he said. "Helen always puts dinner extras there. Microwave is 3 steps to the right of the sink." Tasha heated the food while Julian got glasses from a cabinet. They ate standing at the kitchen island, the house silent around them. "This presentation matters," Julian said suddenly. "Richardson is deciding between 3 companies for a major contract. If we land it, we'll expand into new markets. Open offices in 6 new cities. Create hundreds of jobs. And if that man's hostile takeover had succeeded?" Tasha asked. Julian's jaw tightened. "He would have gutted the company. Sold off the profitable divisions, closed the rest. Thousands would have lost their jobs. You carry a lot of weight on your shoulders. It's my responsibility." He set down his fork. "My father built this company from nothing. When he died, I was 25 and completely unprepared. I spent 10 years learning from every mistake, building it into something even bigger than his vision. Then the accident happened and everyone assumed I was finished. But you weren't." "No. I was angry, bitter, lost." Julian's voice went quiet. "I pushed away everyone who tried to help. My fiancée left. My friends stopped calling. I told myself I didn't need anyone, that needing people made me weak." Tasha wanted to reach out to touch his hand, but she held back. "And now I don't know what I think." He turned his face toward her, even though he couldn't see her. "You confuse me, Tasha. You don't act like someone who was forced into this marriage. You act like you actually want to be here." "I do want to be here." "Why?" The question came out raw. "Why would you want this? Want me?" The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. "Because you're not what people think you are. You're not cold or cruel. You're protecting yourself, which is different. And because kindness should be repaid with kindness. You gave me a home, security, respect. I'm just trying to give you the same." Julian was silent for so long that Tasha thought she'd said too much. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one has been kind to me in a very long time. Then I guess we're both learning something new." Tasha collected their plates and carried them to the sink. "You're learning to accept help. I'm learning to offer it without being asked." She washed the dishes while Julian stood nearby, listening to the sound of running water. When she finished, he said, "Tomorrow's presentation starts at 9. We should both get some sleep." "Good night, Julian." "Tasha?" She paused at the kitchen door. "The presentation looks good. Patricia couldn't have done better." High praise from a man who rarely praised anyone. Tasha went to bed smiling. The next morning she woke at 7 to her phone ringing. Patricia, calling from the hospital. "Tasha, thank God. I can't get there for the presentation. Can you go with Mr. Blackwell? He'll need someone to advance the slides at the right times." "Of course. Is your daughter okay?" "She will be." "And Tasha? Thank you for helping last night." Tasha dressed quickly in navy pants and a red blouse, trying to look professional. Julian was already in the entrance hall when she came down, wearing a charcoal suit that made him look powerful and completely in control. "Patricia called," he said. "You don't have to do this if you're uncomfortable." "I'm coming." Tasha picked up her bag. "We worked hard on that presentation. I want to see you land this contract." In the car, Julian reviewed the key points, speaking them aloud to cement them in memory. Tasha listened, learning about market analysis and growth projections. His passion for the work was evident in every word, and she found herself caught up in his enthusiasm. The Richardson building was downtown, all glass and steel. Tasha described the lobby to Julian as they entered, the high ceilings and modern art. He listened intently, building his own picture of the space. In the conference room, she guided him to his seat at the head of the table and set up the laptop. The Richardson team entered, 3 executives who eyed Julian with poorly concealed skepticism. "Mr. Blackwell," the lead executive said, "we weren't expecting your assistant to join us." "This is my wife, Tasha," Julian corrected smoothly. "She'll be advancing the slides." For the next hour, Tasha watched Julian command the room. He spoke with confidence and precision, answering questions without hesitation. She advanced slides at his subtle cues, a small nod or pause in his speech. The presentation flowed seamlessly. The Richardson executives stopped looking skeptical and started looking impressed. When it ended, the lead executive stood and extended his hand before remembering. He pulled it back awkwardly. Julian simply smiled. "I'll shake on the deal if we have one, Mr. Richardson." "You have a deal." Richardson grasped Julian's hand firmly. Your proposal is the strongest we've seen. We'll have contracts drawn up by Monday. In the car afterward, Julian's whole demeanor had changed. He sat back in his seat, tension draining from his shoulders. We did it. You did it, Tasha corrected. I just pressed a button. You did more than that. You were there. He turned toward her. I haven't brought anyone to a presentation since the accident. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have support. You'll always have my support. The words came out before Tasha could stop them. For whatever that's worth. Julian reached out, his hand finding hers on the seat between them. He squeezed gently. It's worth more than you know. They rode home in comfortable silence, his hand still holding hers. And Tasha realized that something had shifted between them. Not love, not yet. But the foundation for something real. Something built on mutual respect and quiet understanding. Something that might grow into everything she'd secretly hoped for on that terrible wedding day. Sunday morning arrived with unexpected warmth. Tasha woke to sunlight streaming through her windows and the sound of birds in the garden. For the first time since the wedding, she felt genuinely rested. The successful presentation had lifted something heavy from the house, as if even the walls had been holding their breath. She dressed in comfortable clothes, jeans and a bright blue shirt, then headed downstairs. Helen was already in the kitchen, humming as she prepared breakfast. Mr. Blackwell is in the garden, Helen said with a knowing smile. Had his coffee outside this morning. First time in months he's done that. Tasha found him on the terrace, sitting at an iron table with his face turned toward the sun. He'd removed his dark glasses and she caught a glimpse of his eyes for the first time. Pale blue, unfocused, staring at nothing. She understood why he usually kept them hidden. They revealed his vulnerability in a way the glasses concealed. Good morning, she said softly, announcing her presence. Julian's head turned toward her voice. Morning. Helen's making her famous pancakes. You should try them. Join me? Tasha pulled out a chair. Actually, I was hoping you'd walk with me. The garden path is straight, easy to navigate. I used to walk it every morning before. He trailed off, then continued. I'd like to try again. With you there. Tasha's heart swelled. I'd love that. They walked slowly, Julian's hand trailing along the stone wall that bordered the path. Tasha described everything she saw. The roses just beginning to bloom, the fountain with its bronze dolphins, the old oak tree that must have been there for a century. Julian listened intently, occasionally asking questions about colors or the way light filtered through leaves. I miss colors most, he admitted. Sounds and textures I can experience. But color exists only in memory now. Sometimes I worry I'm forgetting them. Your office has a painting, Tasha said. 3 vertical panels, mostly blue. The triptych. I bought it at an art auction the week before the accident. Julian's voice went soft. I remember standing in front of it, seeing layers of cobalt and cerulean and navy, like looking into deep water. I paid too much for it because I couldn't imagine not seeing it every day. It's beautiful, Tasha said. The kind of blue that feels calm and sad at the same time. That's exactly right. Julian stopped walking. You see things clearly. Not just literally. You understand the feeling behind what you're looking at. My grandmother taught me that. She was an artist. Said every color has an emotion attached to it. Tasha smiled at the memory. She'd make me describe paintings to her, not just what they showed but what they made me feel. I'd like to hear you do that sometime. Describe paintings from my collection. Julian's face was thoughtful. If you're willing. Anytime you want. They completed the circuit of the garden and returned to the terrace where Helen had left breakfast. They ate together, talking about small things. Julian told her about the garden's design, how his mother had planted most of the roses before she died. Tasha shared stories about her grandmother's garden, much smaller but equally loved. It was the most normal conversation they'd had. The most real. Monday morning shattered their peace. Tasha was having coffee when Patricia rushed in, her face pale. Mrs. Blackwell, is Mr. Blackwell here? In his office. What's wrong? Hammond. The man who tried to buy the company last month. He's filed a lawsuit claiming the Richardson contract was obtained fraudulently. He's trying to get it blocked pending investigation. Tasha set down her cup carefully. That's ridiculous. We earned that contract fairly. Of course we did. But Hammond has connections and he's spreading rumors that Mr. Blackwell can't actually run the company. That he's using adaptive technology to fake competence. Patricia's hands shook. If this goes public, if clients start doubting his abilities, it could destroy everything. Tasha stood. Where's Julian? Office. He's on the phone with our lawyers. She found him pacing behind his desk, phone to his ear, his face carved from stone. I don't care what it costs. Find everything on Hammond. Every business deal, every contract, every transaction. There has to be something. He listened then, do it. Now. He ended the call and sensed Tasha's presence. You heard? Patricia told me. This is harassment. This is business. Julian's voice was bitter. Hammond sees an opportunity. A blind CEO fighting a legal battle is vulnerable. He thinks I'll settle, maybe even sell just to make this go away. Will you? Never. The word came out like a vow. But he's right about one thing. This will be a fight and it will get ugly. My blindness will become the focus. People will question my competence. The board might panic. Tasha moved closer. Then we prove them wrong. All of them. You're not vulnerable, Julian. You're the smartest person in any room you enter. So let's show them that. He turned toward her voice. How? The lawsuit claims fraud in obtaining the Richardson contract. That means they're questioning the presentation. But I was there. I saw you command that room without notes, without visual cues. You answered complex questions instantly. You understood nuances in their concerns that I didn't even catch. Tasha's mind raced. We need Richardson to publicly confirm that your presentation was the strongest, that your blindness didn't factor into their decision at all. Julian was quiet, thinking. Richardson won't want to get involved in a lawsuit. Not in the lawsuit. But maybe in a press statement about their decision-making process. They can emphasize that they chose quality and innovation, not personal factors. Tasha pulled out her phone. What's Richardson's direct number? For a moment, Julian simply stood there. Then he rattled off the number from memory. You're sure about this? I'm sure that you deserve to fight back. And I'm sure that I'm not letting Hammond spread lies about you. Tasha dialed, then handed Julian the phone. Tell Richardson the truth. Tell him what's happening. The conversation lasted 10 minutes. Tasha could only hear Julian's side, but she heard his voice go from tense to surprise to something almost like gratitude. Thank you, Julian said finally. That means more than you know. He ended the call and set the phone down carefully. Richardson is issuing a statement this afternoon. He said, and I quote, anyone who thinks Julian Blackwell's blindness makes him less capable has never met the man. He's the most thorough CEO I've dealt with in 30 years. That's wonderful. He also said something else. Julian's voice went quiet. He said he was glad to see I'd found a partner. That the woman advancing the slides clearly believed in me, and that kind of support was rare in business. Tasha felt warmth spread through her chest. He's right. I do believe in you. Why? Julian asked the question again, the same one from the kitchen. But this time, his voice held wonder instead of doubt. Why do you keep showing up for me? You don't have to. This lawsuit, this fight, none of it is your responsibility. Yes, it is. Tasha stepped closer. I'm your wife. That's not just a legal status. It means I stand with you. It means when someone attacks you, they attack us both. Julian reached out, his hand finding her arm, then sliding down to take her hand. I've been alone for so long. I'd forgotten what it feels like to have someone on my side. You're not alone anymore. She squeezed his hand. And we're going to win this fight. Together. The next week was chaos. Hammond's lawsuit dominated business news. Reporters called constantly. Julian's board requested an emergency meeting. But through it all, Julian stayed focused and Tasha stayed beside him. She fielded phone calls, screened messages, and kept detailed notes Julian could review. She attended board meetings, describing the expressions and body language he couldn't see. She worked late into the night helping him prepare responses and strategies. And slowly, methodically, Julian's legal team built their case. They found irregularities in Hammond's business practices. Nothing criminal, but enough to make his own ethics questionable. Richardson's public statement generated positive press. Other business leaders came forward supporting Julian, sharing their own experiences working with him. The narrative shifted. Instead of a story about a disabled CEO struggling to lead, it became a story about a successful businessman fighting baseless attacks. 2 weeks after Hammond filed his lawsuit, Julian's lawyers called. We have everything we need. Hammond's backing down. He's withdrawing the suit and issuing an apology. That evening, Julian opened a bottle of wine from his private collection. He and Tasha sat in his office, glasses raised. To winning, Julian said. To proving them all wrong, Tasha added. They drank and Julian set down his glass. I couldn't have done this without you. The phone calls, the meetings, the late nights. You never complained. Never suggested I should just settle and make it easy. Because easy isn't always right. Tasha studied his face in the lamplight. You deserve to fight. You deserve to win. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, so softly she almost missed it, I'm glad it was you. That day at the altar. When your sister didn't show up and you came instead. I was angry at first. Bitter about the whole situation. But now, I'm glad. Tasha's breath caught. Julian? I'm not good at this, he continued. At expressing feelings or admitting I need someone. But you've been patient with me. Kind when I didn't deserve it. And somewhere along the way this stopped feeling like a business arrangement and started feeling like... He paused, searching for words. Like a real marriage? Tasha offered quietly. Like a partnership. Like the first good thing that's happened to me since the accident. He turned his face toward her. I know this isn't what either of us planned. But maybe we could try to make it something better than we expected. Joy bloomed in Tasha's chest. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. Julian smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Good. Then let's start over. No more separate wings, no more polite distance. Let's actually try to build something together. Starting when? Starting now. He stood and held out his hand. Come on. I want to show you something. She took his hand and let him lead her through the house to the library. He stopped at the piano, running his fingers over the keys. I haven't played since the accident, he said. Music was something I experienced visually too. Reading notes, watching my hands. Without that it felt wrong. Incomplete. He sat on the bench. But Patricia mentioned you play. Will you play something? Let me hear music through someone else's joy instead of my own loss. Tasha sat beside him, her heart full. She began to play a simple piece, one her grandmother had taught her. Soft and sweet, filled with gentle hope. Julian listened, his eyes closed, his face peaceful. When she finished, he placed his hands on the keys beside hers. Together, they played a simple melody, his muscle memory and her guidance blending into something beautiful. Outside, night settled over the garden. Inside, two people who'd started as strangers were becoming something more. Something real. Something worth fighting for. And Tasha realized, sitting beside her husband in the quiet library, that sometimes the best things in life weren't planned. They were discovered in unexpected moments, built on small gestures of kindness, and strengthened through shared struggles. She'd come to this marriage as a last resort, a sacrifice to save her family. But she was starting to think she might have found something better than rescue. She might have found home. Spring deepened into early summer, and the mansion that once felt like a beautiful prison transformed into something warmer. Julian stopped eating meals in his office and started joining Tasha in the breakfast room. They talked over coffee in the mornings and wine in the evenings. The topics ranged from business to books to memories from their childhoods. Tasha learned that Julian had grown up an only child, lonely in a house much like this one. That he'd studied economics because his father expected it, even though his first love was music. That he'd traveled extensively before the accident, collecting art and memories from dozens of countries. Julian learned that Tasha had always been the responsible one in her family, the daughter who handled problems and smoothed over conflicts. That she'd wanted to be a teacher once, before practical concerns pushed her toward data analysis. That she loved rainy days and old movies and the smell of books. They were learning each other, piece by piece. One evening in late June, Tasha found Julian in the library again, standing before the large painting that dominated the far wall. His fingers traced the frame's ornate edges. This one was my favorite, he said without turning. He'd learned to sense her presence the way he sensed everything now, through sound and air movement and instinct. I bought it in Florence on my 30th birthday. Stood in the gallery for an hour just looking at it. Tasha came to stand beside him. The painting showed a Tuscan landscape, rolling hills in shades of gold and green, cypress trees pointing toward a brilliant blue sky. Tell me about it. The artist used light like a living thing. See how the sun hits the hilltop village? The way shadows pool in the valleys? It's late afternoon in the painting, that golden hour before sunset. Julian's voice went soft with remembrance. I could almost feel the warmth on my face looking at it. Would you like me to describe it to you now? Tasha asked gently. The way we talked about in the garden? Julian nodded and they sat on the leather sofa facing the painting. Tasha took a moment to really look, to find the right words. The hills roll like waves frozen in earth, she began. 3 main slopes, each a different shade. The closest is yellow-green like wheat fields. The middle is deeper green with those dark cypress trees standing guard. The farthest hill is hazy blue, distance turning it into something almost imaginary. Julian listened intently, his face peaceful. The village sits on the middle hill, Tasha continued. Stone buildings with red tile roofs, all clustered together like they're keeping secrets. A church tower rises above the rest, catching the light. Everything is warm. Gold and amber and that particular shade of Italian sky that's more than just blue. It's hopeful somehow. Yes, Julian breathed. That's exactly it. Hopeful. They sat in comfortable silence, then Julian spoke again. Will you describe the others? All the paintings I collected? For the next hour, Tasha walked him through his collection, painting pictures with words. An abstract piece that looked like music frozen in color. A portrait of a woman laughing, joy captured in oil paint. A seascape so realistic she could almost hear waves crashing. With each description, Julian's expression grew lighter. Not happy exactly, but something close. Peaceful. Connected to the beauty he could no longer see but could experience through her words. Thank you, he said when she finished. I'd forgotten how much I loved these. Stopped coming in here because it hurt too much to be surrounded by things I couldn't appreciate anymore. But you can appreciate them, Tasha said. Just differently. Through memory and description and imagination. Maybe that's not less. Maybe it's just another way of seeing. Julian reached for her hand, finding it easily now. He'd memorized where she sat, how she moved. You have a gift for this. For making me see things not with my eyes but with something deeper. My grandmother called it seeing with your heart. Tasha smiled. She said the best art couldn't be understood with vision alone anyway. That real beauty required feeling. Smart woman. Julian turned his face toward her, those pale blue eyes that saw nothing but somehow felt like they saw everything. I want to show you something. Come with me. He led her upstairs to a room she hadn't entered before. When he opened the door, Tasha gasped. An art studio filled the space, north-facing windows flooding it with natural light. Canvases leaned against walls, some blank, others half-finished. Paint tubes and brushes lay scattered on tables. My mother's studio, Julian explained. She was a painter. Not professionally but seriously. She'd spend hours up here creating. When she died, my father left everything exactly as she'd arranged it. After he died, I kept the tradition. His voice grew quiet. I haven't been in this room since the accident either. Tasha walked through the space, studying the paintings. They were beautiful, full of life and color and emotion. She was talented. She was happy when she painted. That's what I remember most. The joy on her face when she'd finish a piece. Julian moved carefully through the room, his fingers finding familiar landmarks. A table. An easel. The windowsill. I thought maybe you'd like to use this space. If you want to paint or draw or just have somewhere quiet, that's yours. Emotion welled in Tasha's throat. You're giving me your mother's studio? I'm sharing it with you. There's a difference. Julian found her hand again. You've given me so much. Patience. Support. A different way to experience the art I thought I'd lost. This feels like a small thing in comparison. It's not small. Tasha squeezed his hand. It's perfect. Thank you. They stood together in the sunlit studio, surrounded by one woman's creative legacy, building their own. That night they had dinner on the terrace. Helen had outdone herself, preparing grilled fish with vegetables from the garden. Tasha described the sunset to Julian, the way orange and pink bled across the sky like watercolors running together. What's your favorite color? Julian asked suddenly. Red, Tasha answered without hesitation. Bright red like poppies or fire engines. My grandmother always said red was the color of life. Passionate and bold and unafraid. Mine was blue. Specifically cerulean, that bright sky blue that's almost electric. Julian smiled. I guess we complement each other. Cool and warm. Like the painting in your office. Exactly. He paused, then said carefully, I've been thinking. About this marriage. About us. Tasha's heart beat faster. What about us? I know we agreed to try. To make this real instead of just legal. But I haven't actually asked you what you want. What would make you happy? Julian's fingers drummed once on the table, a rare show of nervousness. So I'm asking now. What do you want, Tasha? The question was so open, so vulnerable, that Tasha took a moment to consider it carefully. I want what we're building. This partnership. The conversations and shared meals and quiet evenings. I want to keep learning who you are beneath the walls you built. And I want you to know who I am too, not just the helpful wife but the real person. I'd like that. Julian's voice was soft. Tell me something real. Something you've never told anyone. Tasha thought, then decided on honesty. I was relieved when my sister ran away. Julian's eyebrows rose. That's unexpected. I know. I should have been angry or hurt. But mostly I felt free. Like for the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in someone's shadow. I was the one making the choice, even if it was a choice forced on me. She twisted her napkin in her lap. That probably makes me a terrible person. No. It makes you human. Julian leaned forward. I was relieved when my fiancée left after the accident. Now it was Tasha's turn to be surprised. Really? Really? She was beautiful and charming and I thought I loved her. But when I lost my sight she couldn't handle it. Couldn't look at me without pity. Couldn't touch me without hesitation. It hurt when she left, but it also freed me from pretending we had something real. He smiled slightly. So you see, we're both terrible people. Or just honest ones. Tasha laughed softly. Maybe that's what we're building here. An honest marriage. No pretending, no performing. Just two people figuring out how to fit together. I like that definition. Julian stood and held out his hand. Walk with me. The garden at night is beautiful, or so I remember. They walked through the darkening garden, Tasha describing the way flowers glowed in the fading light, how fireflies were beginning to emerge from the grass. Julian listened and shared his own memories of summer evenings, back when he could see them. At the fountain they stopped. Water burbled over the bronze dolphins, a constant, soothing sound. Julian turned to face Tasha, his hands finding her shoulders with practiced ease. I need to tell you something, he said seriously. I'm not good at this. At relationships or emotions or any of it. I'll probably mess up. Say the wrong thing or retreat when I should stay open. But I want you to know that I'm trying. Really trying. I know. Tasha covered his hands with hers. And I'm trying too. To be patient and understanding while also being honest about what I need. We're both learning. What do you need? Julian asked. This. Exactly this. Conversations and honesty and you letting me in. She hesitated, then added, and maybe someday for this marriage to be about more than partnership. More how? Tasha felt her cheeks warm, grateful he couldn't see her blush. I care about you, Julian. More than I expected to. More than makes logical sense given how we started. But feelings don't follow logic. Julian was quiet for so long that Tasha began to regret her honesty. Then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. I care about you too. You've become the best part of my days. The reason I get up in the morning. The person I think about when I should be focusing on work. So what do we do about it? Tasha asked. We keep doing what we're doing. Building this thing between us, one honest conversation at a time. No rushing, no pressure. Just seeing where it goes. Julian smiled. Terrible pun intended. Tasha laughed and the tension broke. They walked back to the house hand in hand, comfortable in the growing darkness. That night, Tasha lay in bed in the West Wing, thinking about Julian in his rooms across the house. They'd come so far from those first cold days. From strangers forced together to something approaching friends. Maybe more than friends. Her phone buzzed with a text. From Julian, thank you for tonight. For every night. Sleep well, Tasha. She typed back, you too. See you in the morning. Then she smiled at her choice of words and added, another terrible pun. His response came immediately, we're perfect for each other. And lying in the dark, Tasha thought maybe they were. Two imperfect people with complicated histories and unexpected feelings, learning to see each other clearly. Not with eyes but with something better. With understanding. With patience. With the beginning of something that felt suspiciously like love. Could a peaceful marriage survive the return of the people who destroyed it in the first place? Drop a comment about how you'd handle family members who only show up when they need something, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next. Saturday morning arrived with unwelcome visitors. Tasha was in the studio attempting her first painting in years, when Helen knocked on the door. Mrs. Blackwell? Your mother and sister are here. They're asking to see you. Helen's expression was concerned. Mr. Blackwell is in his office. Should I tell him? Tasha's hands tightened on her brush. Yes, please tell him. And show them to the sitting room. I'll be down in a minute. She cleaned her brushes slowly, gathering her composure. 3 months had passed since the wedding. 3 months without a single word from her family beyond her mother's ignored calls. Now they showed up without warning? Tasha knew exactly why they'd come. They wanted something. In the sitting room, her mother perched on the sofa in a designer dress, Her sister Brittany beside her wearing jeans and an oversized sweater. Brittany looked thinner than Tasha remembered, her eyes shadowed. Tasha. Her mother stood with a bright, false smile. You look wonderful. Marriage clearly agrees with you. Mother. Brittany. Tasha remained standing, keeping distance between them. What do you want? Is that any way to greet your family? Her mother's smile faltered. We've missed you terribly. You've had 3 months to miss me. Why show up now? Brittany spoke for the first time, her voice small. I wanted to see you. To explain. Explain what? How you disappeared hours before your own wedding. How you left me to clean up your mess. Tasha fought to keep her voice level. Or maybe explain where you've been while I've been living the life that was supposed to be yours? I couldn't go through with it, Brittany said, tears welling. I couldn't marry a stranger, a blind man, just to save Dad's company. So I ran. And you didn't think to tell me? To give me a choice. You always handle everything, her mother interjected. You're the strong one, the responsible one. We knew you'd manage. The casualness of the statement, the complete lack of acknowledgement of what they'd asked of her, made Tasha's blood boil. I managed because I had no choice. Because you showed up that morning and told me our father would go to prison if I didn't take Brittany's place. You manipulated me. We saved you, her mother corrected, her voice hardening. Look at this house. This life. You should be thanking us. You're married to a billionaire. You'll never want for anything. Except honesty. Except respect. Except the basic consideration of being asked instead of cornered. Tasha crossed her arms. What do you want? Money? Her mother's expression turned calculating. Your father's company is struggling again. Different issues, bad investments. We need a loan. $500,000 should cover it. A loan? Tasha laughed bitterly. Not a request. A demand. Because you think you're entitled to Julian's money now. It's your money too, Brittany said. You're his wife. I'm his wife because you abandoned your responsibility. I'm his wife because you were too selfish to face an uncomfortable situation. You don't get to benefit from that now. Tasha moved toward the door. The answer is no. Leave. You can't be serious. Her mother stood, outrage coloring her face. We're your family. Family helps each other. Family doesn't manipulate each other into marriages. Family doesn't disappear for 3 months and then show up demanding money. Family doesn't treat people like solutions to problems instead of actual human beings. Tasha opened the door. I said leave. Is there a problem? Julian's voice came from the hallway. He moved into the doorway, his presence commanding even without sight. His face was set in hard lines. Mr. Blackwell, Tasha's mother gushed, her tone shifting instantly to sugary sweetness. We were just visiting our daughter. Getting to know you better. Getting to know me. Julian's tone was flat. Or demanding money from my wife? Silence fell. Her mother's face paled. We weren't, it's not like that. I can't see your faces, Julian said quietly, but I don't need to. I heard every word from the hallway. The manipulation, the demands, the complete lack of respect for Tasha. He moved further into the room, his anger controlled but palpable. Let me be very clear. My wife owes you nothing. I owe you nothing. The business arrangement between our families was fulfilled the day Tasha stood at that altar. Any further contact will go through lawyers. You can't cut us off from our own daughter, her mother sputtered. I'm not cutting you off. Tasha is. Julian turned his face toward where Tasha stood. Though I'll support whatever she decides. Tasha felt warmth spread through her chest. He was defending her but not taking the choice away from her. Giving her the power her family had always denied her. I want you to leave, Tasha said firmly. Both of you. Don't call, don't visit, don't ask for anything. You made your choices. Now live with them. Tasha, please. Brittany stood, tears running down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I ran. I was scared and selfish and I know that. But you're my sister. Can't we fix this? For a moment, Tasha felt her resolve waver. Brittany looked genuinely remorseful. But then her mother spoke again. Don't be ridiculous. This little show of independence is nice, but we're still your family. You can't just abandon us because your rich husband says so. The words crystallized Tasha's decision. Her mother didn't see her as a person. Just as a tool, a resource, a means to an end. That would never change. I'm not abandoning you. You abandoned me the day you forced me into this marriage without asking what I wanted. Now please leave before I call security. Tasha moved to stand beside Julian, drawing strength from his solid presence. Her mother gathered her purse with jerky, angry movements. You'll regret this. When you need family, when this marriage falls apart, don't come crawling back to us. This marriage won't fall apart, Julian said calmly. But if it did, you'd still be the last people she'd turn to. Now get out of my house. They left, Brittany looking back once with sad eyes, her mother radiating fury. When the front door closed behind them, Tasha felt her legs go weak. Julian's hand found her elbow, steadying her. Are you okay? He asked softly. I don't know. Tasha moved to the sofa and sat, her hands shaking. That was my family. I just cut them out of my life. They cut themselves out years ago, Julian said, sitting beside her. They just forced you to acknowledge it today. He found her hand and held it firmly. You did the right thing. Why does the right thing feel so terrible? Because you're kind. Because you wanted them to be better than they are. Because somewhere inside you still hoped they'd change. Julian's thumb traced circles on her palm. I understand that. I hope the same about people who proved they didn't deserve it. Tasha leaned against him, needing the comfort of his presence. Thank you. For backing me up. For not just taking over but letting me make the choice. You're stronger than you know. Julian wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You've been handling impossible situations your whole life. This was just the first time you decided not to. They sat quietly, Tasha processing the confrontation. After a long while, she spoke again. Did you mean what you said? That this marriage won't fall apart? Julian was silent for a moment, then, yes. Because I don't want it to. Because somewhere along the way you stopped being the stranger I was forced to marry and became the person I choose to build a life with. He turned his face toward her. If that's what you want too. It is. Tasha lifted her head to look at him. I choose you too, Julian. Every day. He smiled, and the tension that had filled the room during her family's visit finally dissipated. Then we're exactly where we should be. That evening, Julian had his lawyers draw up formal documents severing any financial ties between the Blackwell family and the Bennetts. He had a settlement prepared, enough to keep Tasha's father's company solvent for the short term, with the condition that they never contact Tasha again. You don't have to do this, Tasha said as he explained the arrangements. You don't owe them anything. I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for you. Julian signed the documents with practiced ease. So you don't have to worry about their business failing. So you can move forward without guilt. This closes that chapter completely. Tasha watched him, this man who'd started as a cold stranger and become her staunchest defender. You're too generous. No. I'm protecting what matters to me. He set down the pen. You matter to me, Tasha. More than I thought possible 3 months ago. And I protect what's mine. The possessive words should have bothered her. Instead, they made her feel cherished, claimed in the best possible way. I'm yours. If you want to be. Julian stood and came around the desk. His hands found her face with gentle accuracy, cradling her cheeks. I know I'm not easy. I know I have walls and issues and a habit of pushing people away. But with you, I don't want to push. I want to pull closer. Tasha's breath caught. Julian. Let me finish. His thumb stroked her cheekbones. I can't see your face. I don't know if you're beautiful by conventional standards, though everyone who mentions you says you are. But I know you're beautiful to me. Your voice, your kindness, your strength. The way you describe colors and make me see things I thought I'd lost forever. That's beautiful. You're beautiful. Tears pricked Tasha's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll keep building this with me. Say this marriage we stumbled into can become something we choose on purpose. His voice dropped to a whisper. Say I'm not alone in feeling this way. You're not alone. Tasha covered his hands with hers. I feel it too. This pull toward you. This want to make you smile, to defend you, to spend every evening talking about nothing and everything. I think I'm falling in love with you. Julian's expression transformed, joy breaking through his usual careful control. You think? No. I know. I love you, Julian Blackwell. I probably have for a while now. I just didn't know if I was allowed to feel it. You're allowed to feel anything. He pulled her closer, their foreheads touching. And I love you. Completely. Impossibly. Against all logic and expectation. You walked into my life at the worst possible moment and made everything better. Can I kiss you? Tasha asked, suddenly shy despite everything they'd shared. Julian smiled. I thought you'd never ask. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory. Then deeper, filled with 3 months of growing feelings and restrained desire. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. That was? Julian started. Long overdue, Tasha finished. They laughed, and the last remaining distance between them dissolved. Whatever this marriage had started as, it had become something real. Something chosen. Something built on honesty and respect and genuine affection. That night, Tasha didn't return to the West Wing. Julian led her to his rooms in the East Wing, to the bed where he'd slept alone for 2 years. They fell asleep wrapped together, two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way. And in the morning, when Tasha woke to find Julian tracing her features with gentle fingers, learning her face through touch, she knew she'd made the right choice. All of them. Taking Brittany's place at the altar. Choosing to stay when she could have left. Opening her heart to a man the world called cold but who'd shown her more warmth than anyone in her life. "Good morning," Julian murmured, his fingers mapping the curve of her smile. "Good morning," Tasha replied, and meant it with her whole heart. The invitation arrived on heavy cream cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. The annual Business Leaders Gala, the most important networking event of the year. Every major CEO, every influential investor, every person who mattered in their industry would attend. "I have to go," Julian said, holding the invitation carefully. His fingers traced the embossed edges. "It's expected." Not attending would signal weakness, especially after Hammond's lawsuit. "Then we'll go," Tasha said simply. She'd been reviewing files in his office as had become her habit. 2 weeks had passed since her family's visit, 2 weeks of growing closer to Julian in every way. The West Wing stood empty now, her things moved permanently to his rooms. Julian's jaw tightened. "You don't have to. These events are difficult for me. Navigating crowds, managing conversations with people I can't see. It's exhausting. Which is exactly why I should be there." Tasha set down the file she'd been reading. "I'll be your eyes, Julian. We'll do it together. People will talk." His voice was uncertain in a way it rarely was. "They'll see you guiding me and make assumptions. That I'm weak, dependent, not capable of running my company." Tasha moved to stand beside his chair, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Or they'll see us as a team. As partners who support each other. That's strength, not weakness." Julian covered her hand with his. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. We walk in together, we handle whatever comes, we leave together. Just like everything else we've faced." She squeezed his shoulder. "Besides, I've never been to a fancy gala. I'm curious about the whole experience." That earned her a small smile. "It's mostly boring conversations and overpriced wine." "Sounds perfect." Tasha kissed the top of his head. "Now, what do I wear to one of these things?" The next day, Patricia took Tasha shopping. They visited boutiques Tasha had only seen in magazines, places where a single dress cost more than a month's rent at her old apartment. Patricia was efficient and decisive, steering Tasha toward elegant options. "Mr. Blackwell asked me to spare no expense," Patricia said, holding up a stunning floor-length gown in deep emerald green. "He said you should have whatever you want." Tasha tried on the dress and stared at herself in the mirror. The green silk draped perfectly, making her dark skin glow. The neckline was elegant without being revealing, and the back dipped just low enough to be interesting. She looked sophisticated, confident, beautiful. She looked like she belonged on Julian's arm. "That's the one," Patricia said with satisfaction. "Mr. Blackwell will." She paused, then corrected herself. "Mr. Blackwell will sense how stunning you look." The night of the gala, Tasha dressed carefully. Helen helped with her hair, sweeping it into an elegant updo that showed off her neck and shoulders. Simple diamond earrings that Julian had given her the day before, a gift presented with characteristic directness. "You should have jewelry appropriate for events like this." But his hands had trembled slightly when he'd placed the earrings in her palm, belying his casual tone. When Tasha descended the stairs, Julian waited in the foyer. He wore a black tuxedo that fit him perfectly, his dark glasses in place. Helen must have told him Tasha was coming because he turned toward the sound of her footsteps, his face expectant. "How do I look?" Tasha asked, stopping in front of him. Julian reached out, his hands finding her bare shoulders. His fingers traced the line of her dress, learning its shape. "Tell me." "Green dress, floor length. Simple and elegant." "Hair up." "The earrings you gave me." Tasha covered his hands with hers. "I feel beautiful." "You are beautiful." Julian's voice was rough. "I wish I could see you. But I can feel how this dress fits you, how your skin is warm under my hands. I can imagine you in this color, this green you described once as hopeful." His hands moved to cup her face. "I may not see you with my eyes, but I see you, Tasha. All of you." She kissed him softly, careful not to smudge her lipstick. Ready to face the crowds? With you? Always. The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, the ballroom glittering with chandeliers and filled with elegantly dressed people. As they entered, Tasha felt eyes turned toward them. She kept her head high, her hand resting lightly on Julian's arm. Ballroom in trance, she murmured, just loud enough for him to hear. Chandelier directly ahead about 30 feet. Small tables around the perimeter, bar on the left wall, buffet on the right. Maybe 300 people already here. Julian nodded slightly, acknowledging the information. They moved into the room together, and immediately people began approaching. Business associates offering greetings, rivals assessing Julian with calculating eyes, curious strangers wondering about his beautiful wife. Tasha became Julian's eyes and interpreter. When someone approached, she'd quietly say their name and position, giving Julian the information he needed to respond appropriately. When someone's expression shifted to skepticism or concern, she'd squeeze his arm gently in warning. When rivals circled close, she'd guide Julian into open space where he felt more comfortable. Mr. Blackwell. A heavy-set man approached, his tone condescending. Surprised to see you here. After that unfortunate lawsuit business, I'd have thought you'd keep a lower profile. Tasha felt Julian's arm tense under her hand, but his voice remained calm. The lawsuit was baseless and withdrawn. Ancient history, Patterson. Still, must be difficult managing a company in your condition. Patterson's eyes flickered to Tasha. Lucky you have help now. The implication was clear. Julian needed his wife because he couldn't manage alone. Tasha felt anger flash through her, but before she could respond, Julian spoke with ice in his voice. I've managed quite well for 2 years before Tasha came along. My company's value has doubled in that time while yours has, what was it? Declined 15%. Julian smiled coldly. My condition, as you call it, hasn't affected my ability to read financial reports or make sound business decisions. Perhaps you should focus more on your own company's problems instead of speculating about mine. Patterson's face reddened. He muttered something and moved away. Tasha watched him go with satisfaction. Well done, she murmured to Julian. He's been trying to undermine me since the accident. I'm done being polite about it. Julian's jaw was set. People see blindness and assume incompetence. They forget that business is about information and decisions, not about vision. They moved through the room, handling conversation after conversation. Tasha described people's reactions, guided Julian around obstacles, and increasingly found herself defending him against subtle and not-so-subtle implications that he wasn't capable. Your husband is lucky to have you, one woman said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. It must be so hard for him, having to rely on someone for everything. He doesn't rely on me for everything, Tasha corrected firmly. He's one of the most capable people I've ever met. I provide information in social settings because crowds are chaotic. But he makes his own decisions, runs his own company, and lives his own life. My presence is support, not necessity. The woman blinked, taken aback by Tasha's directness. She excused herself quickly. You don't have to fight my battles, Julian said quietly after she'd gone. Yes, I do. Because you're my husband and I love you. And because these people are wrong about you. Tasha moved closer. Also because it makes me furious when people underestimate you based on something beyond your control. Julian's expression softened. Have I mentioned lately how much I love you? Not in the last hour. Tasha smiled. Oversight on my part. He leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. I love you. And I'm incredibly glad you're here with me. A photographer approached, asking for a photo. Tasha described his position and approach to Julian, who turned to face the camera with practiced ease. They posed together, Tasha's hand in Julian's, both smiling naturally. Beautiful couple, the photographer said as he moved away. They were, Tasha realized. Not in spite of Julian's blindness but including it. A couple who'd learned to navigate the world together, who complemented each other's strengths and compensated for each other's challenges. As the evening wore on, Tasha noticed the conversations shifting. People who'd initially approached with skepticism left looking thoughtful. Julian's sharp business insights and quick wit made it impossible to dismiss him as diminished. And Tasha's presence beside him, confident and supportive without being overbearing, made them appear formidable together. They were rewriting the narrative people had created. Late in the evening, they found themselves briefly alone at a balcony overlooking the city. Cool air washed over them, a relief from the crowded ballroom. You were magnificent tonight, Julian said. Every description perfectly timed, every intervention subtle enough that people didn't realize you were doing it. You made navigating that room feel effortless when I know it wasn't. You were the magnificent one. Every conversation, every business insight, every perfectly timed comeback. Tasha leaned against the railing. People came in doubting you and left impressed. That was all you. It was us. Julian found her hand. I couldn't have done it alone. Not with the grace we managed together. You're right what you said before. We're a team. Partners. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell? A voice interrupted. They turned to find Richardson, the CEO who'd given Julian the major contract. I wanted to say goodbye before leaving. Excellent seeing you both tonight. Thank you for coming, Julian said. I also wanted to mention something. Richardson's voice grew thoughtful. When I awarded you that contract, some of my board questioned the decision. Worried about your ability to deliver. Tonight, watching you work the room, handle challenges, command respect despite deliberate attempts to undermine you, I'm more confident than ever that I made the right choice. He paused. You two are impressive together. A true partnership. That's rare in business and rarer still in marriage. After he left, Tasha felt tears prick her eyes. That was kind of him. That was truthful. Julian pulled her close. This marriage started as an obligation. But it's become the best decision either of us never intended to make. Tasha laughed through her tears. That's the most complicated compliment I've ever received. I'm a complicated man. Julian found her face, his hands gentle on her cheeks. But what I feel for you is simple. Pure. Complete. They kissed there on the balcony, the city lights spread below them, the sound of the gala muted behind closed doors. And Tasha thought about how far they'd come. From that cold wedding day to this moment of perfect understanding. Inside, someone was probably noticing their absence. Some rival was probably whispering about Julian's weakness. Some skeptic was probably doubting his capabilities. But out here none of that mattered. Here they were just Julian and Tasha. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something real. Something strong enough to face any challenge. Something worth everything it took to create. They returned to the ballroom hand in hand, ready to face whatever remained of the evening. Together as they faced everything. As they always would. Summer deepened and with it the relationship between Tasha and Julian. They fell into comfortable routines. Breakfast together on the terrace, Julian working while Tasha painted in the studio, dinners where they talked for hours. Helen commented that the house felt alive again, filled with laughter and warmth it had lacked for years. But Tasha noticed moments when Julian retreated into himself. When music played, he'd tense and change the channel. When storms rolled through, bringing rain against the windows, he'd grow quiet and distant. When someone mentioned driving, his face would become a careful mask. She didn't push. Just stayed close, a steady presence while he worked through whatever memories haunted him. One evening in late July, a thunderstorm swept across the city. Lightning cracked across the sky, and rain pounded against the mansion's windows. Tasha was reading in the library when she realized Julian wasn't in his office where he'd been earlier. She found him in his bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, hands clenched in his lap. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. Julian? Tasha approached carefully. Are you okay? Fine. His voice was tight. Just a headache. It was a lie. Tasha could see the tremor in his hands, the tension in his shoulders. She sat beside him, close but not touching, giving him space while offering presence. It was raining, Julian said suddenly. The night of the accident. Pouring just like this. Thunder and lightning. Roads slick with water. Tasha stayed quiet, letting him speak at his own pace. Kevin was driving. My best friend since college. We'd been at a business dinner, celebrating closing a major deal. We were both happy laughing. He'd just gotten engaged. Was planning a wedding for the spring. Julian's voice cracked. I told him to slow down. The rain was too heavy. But he just laughed and said he'd driven in worse. You don't have to tell me this, Tasha said softly. I want to. I need to. Julian's hands unclenched slightly. The truck came out of nowhere. Ran a red light, hydroplaned through the intersection. Kevin swerved to avoid it and we hit a pole on my side. I remember the sound, metal screaming. Remember pain and then nothing. Tasha took his hand gently. He gripped it like a lifeline. I woke up 3 days later in the hospital. The doctors told me I'd lost my vision. Optic nerve damage, permanent. Then they told me Kevin had died on impact. A tear slipped down Julian's cheek, the first she'd ever seen from him. He died and I went blind and it was just random chance. If I'd been driving, if we'd left 5 minutes earlier or later, if we'd taken a different route. But we didn't. And Kevin died while I lived. I'm so sorry. Tasha moved closer, wrapping her arms around him. That's an impossible weight to carry. I blamed myself. Still do some days. If I'd insisted we wait out the storm. If I'd offered to drive. If I'd been a better friend. Julian's voice broke. The last thing Kevin ever said to me was a joke. Something stupid about the deal we'd closed. He was laughing when we crashed. And then he was gone. They sat in the darkness, thunder rumbling outside while Julian grieved. Tasha held him and let him cry, something he probably hadn't done since the accident. The walls he'd built, the coldness he'd projected, all of it rooted in this unbearable guilt. It wasn't your fault, Tasha said finally. The truck ran a red light. The driver was drunk, wasn't he? She'd researched the accident after Patricia mentioned it months ago, wanting to understand what Julian had survived. Julian nodded against her shoulder. Then it was that driver's fault. Not yours, not Kevin's. Just a terrible, senseless accident. Tasha pulled back enough to see his face. Have you talked to anyone about this? A counselor? Kevin's family? No. I went to the funeral, but Kevin's parents were. Julian wiped his eyes roughly. They were kind. Too kind. Said it wasn't my fault, that they didn't blame me. But I saw their faces. Saw them looking at me, alive and standing there while their son was in a casket. I couldn't face them after that. Maybe you should. Tasha kept her voice gentle. Maybe they need to see you healed. Maybe you need to hear them say again that they don't blame you. Because you're still carrying this guilt like a punishment and it's eating you alive. Julian was quiet for a long time. Then, his mother sent me a card. Last month. I had Patricia read it to me. She said she'd heard I'd gotten married and she hoped I was happy. Said Kevin would want that for me. She's right. Tasha cupped Julian's face in her hands. Your friend loved you. He wouldn't want you living in permanent penance for something that wasn't your fault. He'd want you to heal, to be happy, to live fully. How can I be happy when he's dead? When he never got to marry his fiancée or have the future he planned? Because you're alive. Because wasting your life doesn't honor his memory. Living well does. Tasha's thumb stroked his cheeks. You've been punishing yourself by pushing everyone away, by refusing joy, by treating your blindness as a penance instead of a challenge to overcome. But Julian, you're still here. You survived. And you have every right to build a beautiful life with what you have. More tears fell and Julian pulled her close again. They stayed like that while the storm raged outside, two people wrapped together against old pain and new understanding. I'm afraid, Julian whispered. Afraid that if I stop feeling guilty I'll forget him. Forget what happened. You'll never forget. But you can remember with love instead of pain. Remember the friendship and the laughter instead of just the ending. Tasha kissed his temple. And maybe you should visit his grave. Talk to him. Tell him you're sorry and that you miss him and that you're trying to move forward. Get permission from your friend to live. Julian nodded slowly. Will you come with me? Of course. Whenever you're ready. The storm passed, leaving the air clean and cool. Julian and Tasha lay together on his bed, talking in the darkness. He shared stories about Kevin, their college adventures, the business they dreamed of building together, the stupid jokes and serious moments that defined a deep friendship. Tasha listened, grateful that he trusted her with these precious memories. Grateful that he was finally letting himself grieve properly instead of carrying the weight alone. Thank you, Julian said as exhaustion finally pulled them towards sleep. For listening. For not judging me. For helping me see that I don't have to live in that moment forever. That's what partners do. Tasha kissed him softly. We carry each other's burdens and help each other heal. The next day, Julian asked Patricia to contact Kevin's parents. Within hours they'd responded. They'd love to see him, to meet his wife, to reconnect. They set a date for the following Saturday. The week passed in a blur of nervous preparation. Julian was quieter than usual, processing emotions he'd kept locked away for 2 years. Tasha stayed close, offering support without smothering him. Saturday arrived sunny and clear. They drove to the cemetery where Kevin was buried, then continued to his parents' home for lunch. The older couple greeted them warmly, embracing Julian with tears in their eyes. You look good, Kevin's mother said. We've worried about you. I'm better now. Julian's hand found Tasha's. I have help. They spent the afternoon sharing memories of Kevin. His parents showed photos, told stories, laughed and cried in equal measure. And slowly, Tasha watched Julian's guilt begin to ease. Not disappear, maybe it never would completely, but soften into something manageable. Kevin talked about you constantly, his father said. You were like a brother to him. He was so proud of your business, so excited about the future you were building together. He paused. I know what happened wasn't your fault. I know you probably don't believe that, but it's true. The drunk driver who ran that light took my son from us. Not you. Never you. Julian's eyes filled again. I miss him every day. So do we. But seeing you here, alive and happy, with this lovely woman who clearly adores you, that helps. Because Kevin loved you and he'd want you to have this. To have everything. Kevin's mother took Julian's hand. Please don't waste your life on guilt. Honor Kevin's memory by living well. That's all we've ever wanted for you. After they left, Julian asked Tasha to drive to Kevin's grave. She guided him through the cemetery to the simple headstone. Julian knelt, his hands finding the carved letters of his friend's name. I'm sorry, he said softly. For not protecting you. For surviving when you didn't. For taking 2 years to visit because I couldn't face you. He paused, gathering strength. But I'm going to try now. Try to live the way you would have wanted. Build a good life with Tasha. Be happy. That's the best way I know to honor you. Tasha stood back, giving him privacy for this moment. When Julian stood, his face was peaceful in a way she'd never seen. Not happy exactly, but lighter. Unburdened. Ready? She asked. Yes. He took her hand. Let's go home. That night, for the first time since the accident, Julian sat at the piano in the library. His fingers found the keys tentatively, playing slow, simple notes. Tasha sat nearby, listening as he relearned something he'd loved and abandoned. The music was halting at first, rusty from disuse. But gradually, it smoothed into a melody. Something beautiful and sad and hopeful all at once. When he finished, Julian's hands rested on the keys. That was Kevin's favorite piece, he said. I played it at his funeral, but I couldn't remember it without breaking down. Tonight I could. It was beautiful. Tasha moved to sit beside him on the bench. Play it again? He did, and this time she sang along softly, her voice untrained but sweet. They made music together in the quiet library, healing old wounds with new understanding. Later, as they prepared for bed, Julian pulled Tasha close. I've been carrying so much for so long. Guilt, grief, fear. I used it all as armor, keeping people out so no one could hurt me again. But you got through anyway. Somehow, you made me feel safe enough to put down the weight. You did that yourself. I just stood beside you while you figured it out. Tasha kissed him. And I'll keep standing here for as long as you need me. Forever, then. Julian's voice was certain. I'll need you forever. Good thing I'm not going anywhere. Tasha smiled against his lips. We're in this together. All the joy and all the pain. Partners, remember? Partners, Julian agreed. In everything. They fell asleep wrapped together, two people who'd healed each other's deepest wounds simply by showing up with love and patience and unwavering support. The walls Julian had built were finally coming down. Not all at once, but piece by piece, day by day. And in their place grew something stronger. Trust, love, and the absolute certainty that neither of them would face the future alone. August brought unexpected news. Julian received a call from Dr. Rebecca Foster, one of the country's leading ophthalmologists. Patricia transferred the call to his office where Tasha was reading while he worked. Mr. Blackwell, I've been following your case for some time, Dr. Foster said, her voice professional but warm. I'm reaching out because there's been a breakthrough in optic nerve regeneration. An experimental procedure that's shown promising results in patients with injuries similar to yours. Julian's hand tightened on the phone. What kind of results? Partial to full vision restoration in about 60% of cases. The procedure uses stem cell therapy combined with targeted nerve stimulation. It's still experimental, not FDA approved for widespread use, but we're conducting clinical trials. She paused. I think you'd be an excellent candidate. Silence stretched. Tasha watched Julian's face cycle through emotions. Hope, fear, skepticism, longing. What's the catch? He asked finally. The usual risks associated with experimental procedures. Small chance of infection, possibility the treatment won't work at all, and in rare cases, the procedure could cause additional damage. Dr. Foster's tone turned gentle. But Mr. Blackwell, the potential upside is regaining your vision. The ability to see again. I need time to think. Julian's voice was carefully controlled. Can I call you back? Of course. But the trial has limited spots and I can't hold one indefinitely. Let me know within the week. After the call ended, Julian sat motionless. Tasha waited, giving him space to process. Finally he spoke. I could see again. Yes. Tasha moved to sit across from him. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Julian rubbed his face. For 2 years I've built my entire life around being blind. Learned to navigate, to work, to function. And now someone says that might not be permanent? It's overwhelming, Tasha supplied. Terrifying. Julian leaned back. What if the procedure fails? What if I get my hopes up and nothing changes? Or worse, what if it works and I realize I've wasted 2 years living in darkness when I could have been searching for solutions? You didn't waste anything. You survived. You adapted. You built a successful company and a life that works for you. Tasha reached across the desk for his hand. But if there's a chance to regain your sight, shouldn't you at least consider it? What if it changes things between us? The question came out quietly, vulnerably. We built this relationship with me being blind. You learned to love me like this. What if having sight makes me different? What if I'm different? Understanding dawned. You're afraid I'll love you less if you can see? I'm afraid of changing the dynamic that works. I'm afraid of disappointing you somehow. I'm afraid. Julian's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm afraid of seeing you and having you see me, really seeing you and discovering this isn't what either of us thought. Tasha came around the desk and knelt beside his chair. Julian, look at me. He turned his face toward her voice. I fell in love with who you are as a person. Your intelligence, your strength, your kindness buried under protective walls. Your blindness was just one aspect of you, not the defining feature. If you regain your vision, you'll still be the same man. The man I love. The man I chose. Promise. The word came out like a child seeking reassurance. I promise. Whether you're blind or sighted, you're my husband. My partner. My love. That doesn't change based on your optical nerves functioning. She squeezed his hands. But this has to be your decision. Not mine, not your doctor's, not what anyone else thinks you should do. What do you want? Julian was quiet for a long time, thinking. Then, I want to try. Not because being blind is terrible or because I can't function like this. But because I want to see you. Want to look at your face while we talk. Want to watch you paint in the studio. Want to see the sunset you describe so beautifully every evening. His voice grew stronger. I want to see the world again on my own terms. Because I choose to, not because I need to. Then call Dr. Foster back. Schedule the consultation. Tasha stood and kissed him. We'll do this together like everything else. The next week was a whirlwind of medical appointments. Dr. Foster examined Julian thoroughly, ran tests, reviewed his medical history. Other specialists weighed in, discussing risks and potential outcomes. You're a good candidate, Dr. Foster confirmed. The nerve damage is extensive but not complete. There are viable pathways we can potentially regenerate. I'd estimate your chances of meaningful vision restoration at around 65%. What constitutes meaningful? Julian asked. Anything from light perception and shapes to full color vision and clarity. We won't know until after the procedure and recovery period. She pulled up scans on a screen, then described them verbally for Julian's benefit. The procedure itself takes about 4 hours. Recovery is 6 to 8 weeks with gradually decreasing bandages and light exposure. If it works, you'll see improvement within the first month. Julian scheduled the surgery for September 15th, giving him time to prepare both mentally and practically. He had to put certain business matters on hold, brief his team extensively, and arrange for Tasha to have medical power of attorney during the procedure. But as the date approached, Julian grew quieter. Tasha would find him standing at windows, his face turned toward light he couldn't see, his expression unreadable. Talk to me, she said one evening 2 weeks before the surgery. What are you thinking? What if I don't like what I see? Julian asked. What if the world isn't as beautiful as I remember? What if I look at you and you don't match the picture I've built in my mind? Then you'll adjust. The same way you adjusted to losing your sight. Tasha turned him. To face her. But Julian, I'm not worried about matching some imaginary ideal. I'm worried that you're building this up as something that will magically fix everything or solve all your problems. I know it won't fix everything. Julian's hands found her face, tracing her features as he'd done countless times. But it might fix some things. Let me live more fully. Let me see the people I love. And if it doesn't work? Then I'll be exactly where I am now. Blind, functional, happy with you. That's not a terrible outcome. He smiled slightly. I've realized something preparing for this. I'm not doing it because I hate being blind. I'm doing it because I love my life now and want to experience it in a different way. That's a huge difference from 2 years ago when I would have done anything to escape what I'd become. Tasha kissed him softly. That's growth. That's healing. I'm proud of you. The night before the surgery they lay awake talking. Julian shared his fears and hopes, and Tasha listened, offering reassurance when needed and space when he just needed to process aloud. Whatever happens tomorrow, Julian said as exhaustion finally pulled at them, I want you to know something. These past 6 months with you have been the best of my life. Better than before the accident, better than anything I imagined when I was angry and alone. You saved me, Tasha. Not from blindness but from the prison I built around myself. You saved yourself, Tasha corrected. By being brave enough to let me in. By choosing hope over bitterness. By building something real with me instead of hiding behind walls. We saved each other then. Julian pulled her close. And we'll face tomorrow together. Together, Tasha agreed. Always. Morning came early. They arrived at the hospital at 6 and Julian was prepped for surgery. Tasha held his hand until they wheeled him away, then settled into the waiting room for the longest 4 hours of her life. Patricia joined her, bringing coffee and quiet company. Helen sent text messages with encouragement. Even Julian's board members sent well wishes, the company united in hoping for their CEO's recovery. Finally, Dr. Foster emerged, still in her surgical scrubs. The procedure went perfectly. No complications. Julian's in recovery now and you can see him soon. Relief flooded through Tasha. And the outcome? Will he see? We won't know for several weeks. The bandages stay on for the first week, then we'll do gradual light exposure. If the regeneration takes hold, he should start perceiving light and shadow within 2 to 3 weeks. Full vision, if it develops, comes gradually over 6 to 8 weeks. Dr. Foster smiled. But the surgery itself was textbook. We did everything we could. Now we wait and hope. Tasha was allowed into recovery where Julian lay sleeping off the anesthesia. She took his hand and waited for him to wake. When he finally stirred, his first word was her name. I'm here. She squeezed his hand. Surgery's done. Everything went perfectly. Can't see anything. His voice was groggy, worried. You're bandaged. You won't see anything for at least a week. Tasha stroked his hair. But Dr. Foster is optimistic. We just have to be patient. Not my strong suit. But Julian managed a weak smile. Stay with me? I'm not going anywhere. The first week was challenging. Julian hated the bandages, hated being dependent on nurses for basic care, hated the uncertainty. Tasha stayed with him in the hospital, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair by his bed, reading to him and talking through his frustration. I chose this, he said on the 4th day, his tone bitter. Why am I so angry? Because it's hard. Because you gave up control and now you're waiting for results you can't influence. Tasha held his hand. It's okay to be frustrated. Just don't take it out on yourself. On the 7th day, Dr. Foster removed the bandages, replacing them with dark protective glasses. Keep these on for another week. No bright lights. But you can open your eyes underneath them and tell me what you perceive. In the darkened hospital room, Julian slowly opened his eyes. For a long moment he was completely still. Then, light. I see light. Shapes maybe? Something moving. That's excellent. Dr. Foster's voice was warm with satisfaction. The regeneration is taking hold. Continue the light sensitivity protocol, and we'll reassess in a week. Julian went home 2 days later, still wearing the protective glasses, still seeing only vague shapes and light. But there was hope now, tangible and growing. Tasha guided him through the house, describing everything as she always had. But now Julian would pause, turning his head toward light sources, trying to see what his brain was slowly learning to interpret again. This is strange, he said one evening as they sat in the library. I'm between two worlds. Not quite blind anymore but not sighted either. Seeing without understanding what I'm seeing. Your brain needs time to relearn. Tasha sat beside him. You'll get there. The second week brought more progress. Shapes resolved into objects. Light and dark separated into distinct areas. Julian could tell when Tasha entered a room, could identify large furniture pieces, could navigate familiar spaces with increasing confidence. It's like being a child again, he said with wonder. Everything is new. I'm learning to see. The third week, Dr. Foster allowed him to remove the protective glasses for short periods in dim light. And the first time Julian looked at Tasha without any barriers, his breath caught. I can't see details yet. Colors are muted. But I can see your outline. The shape of your face. That you're smiling at me. His own smile was brilliant. You're really there. Really real. I've always been real. Tasha laughed through tears. But yes, I'm here. Progress continued. By week 4, Julian could see colors again, though they were washed out. By week 5, he could read large print with effort. By week 6, his vision had clarified enough that he could see faces, recognize people, move through spaces without guidance. It wasn't perfect vision. Details were sometimes fuzzy, and he tired easily from the effort of processing visual information. But it was sight. Real, functional sight. And then came the day Dr. Foster cleared him to see Tasha in full light with his restored vision. They stood in Dr. Foster's office, fluorescent lights bright overhead. Julian had kept his eyes mostly closed during the final examination, saving the moment. Now Dr. Foster stepped back with a satisfied smile. Your vision is stabilized at about 20/30. Not quite perfect, but excellent for someone who was completely blind 6 months ago. You'll need glasses for reading and detailed work, but for everyday activities you're essentially fully sighted. She looked between them. I'll leave you two alone. Take your time. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Julian stood perfectly still, his eyes closed, his hands clenched at his sides. Julian? Tasha's voice trembled slightly. Are you okay? I'm terrified. He admitted it freely as he'd learned to do with her. What if I look at you and don't feel what I should? What if my imagination built something that reality can't match? Then we'll deal with it together. Tasha moved closer. But I don't think that's going to happen. Because what we have isn't based on appearances. It's based on 6 months of building trust and love and partnership. That doesn't disappear because you can suddenly see my face. Julian nodded slowly. Then, with deliberate care, he opened his eyes and looked at her. The moment stretched, suspended in time. Tasha watched emotions flicker across his face. Surprise, wonder, recognition, and something deeper. His eyes, those pale blue eyes that had been unfocused for so long, now locked onto hers with laser intensity. Oh, he breathed. Oh, Tasha. Is it okay? She asked nervously. Is this okay? You're beautiful. His voice was rough with emotion. But that's not what's making me feel this way. It's your eyes. They're so expressive. I can see everything you're feeling right there in your eyes. The nervousness, the hope, the love. God, I can see that you love me just by looking at you. Tears spilled down Tasha's cheeks. Of course you can. I've never hidden it. Julian stepped closer, his newly sighted eyes devouring every detail of her face. Your skin is darker than I imagined. Richer. And your smile, when you're not crying, it transforms your whole face. You have a dimple on your left cheek. Did you know that? Yes. Tasha laughed through tears. Since I was a child. I couldn't feel it clearly enough to know. But I can see it now. His hands came up to frame her face, but now his eyes followed the movement. This is incredible. I can watch my own hands touching you. Can see your expression change when I do this. He stroked her cheek, watching her eyes flutter closed briefly. Every reaction visible. Is it overwhelming? Completely. Julian's smile was radiant. But in the best way. I spent 6 months falling in love with your voice, your kindness, your strength. Now I get to fall in love with your face too. With the way you look at me like I'm something precious. With the way your whole face lights up when you smile. He kissed her then, and for the first time he could see her lean into him, could watch her eyes close, could observe every nuance of the moment. When they pulled apart, both were crying. I was so afraid, Julian admitted. Afraid that seeing would somehow break the connection we built in darkness. But it doesn't. It just adds another layer. Another way to know you. Come on. Tasha took his hand. Let's go home. I want to show you everything you've been describing to yourself for months. The garden, the paintings, the studio. Everything. The drive home was an adventure. Julian sat in the passenger seat, eyes glued to the window, watching the city pass. Everything is so bright, he kept saying. So colorful. So much happening all at once. At the mansion, Tasha guided him through slowly, letting him see what he'd navigated blind for so long. The elegant entrance hall. The library with its books and piano. His office where he'd worked without seeing screens or papers. In the garden, Julian stood in the late afternoon light, turning in slow circles. The roses are pink. I've forgotten that. And the grass is so green. Not just one green but layers of it. Different shades depending on shadow and sun. Just like you described, Tasha said softly. No. Better. Julian turned to her with wonder in his eyes. Memory is pale compared to this. Real color, real depth, real beauty. They walked through the studio where Tasha had been painting. Julian studied her work, seeing for the first time the landscapes and portraits she'd created over the summer. These are good. Really good. Why didn't you tell me you were this talented? Because you couldn't see them, so it didn't seem important. Tasha shrugged. I was painting for myself. Paint for me too. I want to watch you create. Want to see the process. Julian touched one canvas gently. This one is the view from the terrace, isn't it? Where we have breakfast. You recognize it? I recognize the feeling of it. Peace, warmth, home. That's how I feel when we sit there together. He turned to her. That's what I see in your painting. Not just the visual elements but the emotion. They ended the tour in the library, standing before the Tuscan landscape Julian had bought in Florence. He stared at it for long minutes, his eyes tracing every detail. It's exactly how I remembered, he said finally. The gold light, the cypress trees, the hazy distance. But seeing it again I realize I didn't just miss the beauty. I missed the hope you described. The way light transforms ordinary hills into something magical. He looked at Tasha. That's what you did for me. Transformed my ordinary dark world into something magical through your descriptions, your patience, your love. That evening they dressed for dinner at home. Helen had prepared a celebration meal, and the staff had decorated the dining room with flowers and candles. When Tasha came down in a red dress Julian had never seen, his face transformed. That color on you, he said, standing to meet her. It's stunning. Bold and beautiful just like you described red should be. The color of life. They ate slowly, Julian's eyes constantly returning to Tasha's face. He watched her laugh, watched her talk, watched the candlelight play across her features. And with every glance, his expression grew softer, more certain. After dinner they walked through the garden under stars. Julian could see them now, tiny points of light scattered across the darkness. I forgot how many stars there are. How vast the sky is. What's your favorite thing you've seen today? Tasha asked. You. No hesitation. Every time I look at you I see something new. The way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're thinking. The way your eyes crinkle when you really laugh. The way you look at me like I'm the answer to every question. Julian stopped walking and turned to face her fully. I can see you love me. Really see it. And Tasha, I need you to see something too. He knelt, right there in the garden under the stars, and pulled a small box from his pocket. I know we're already married. I know we said vows 6 months ago in a church surrounded by strangers. But that wasn't real. That was obligation and desperation and fear. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the starlight. A sapphire the color of the painting in his office, surrounded by small diamonds. Tasha Bennett Blackwell, I'm asking you properly this time. Will you marry me? Not because anyone forced you, not because your family needed saving, not because I needed someone to fulfill a contract. But because I love you. Because you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I want to spend every day for the rest of my life seeing you, hearing you, knowing you in every possible way. Tasha was crying again, happy tears streaming down her face. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Julian slid the ring onto her finger beside the platinum band she'd received at their first wedding. Then he stood and kissed her with all the love and gratitude and joy that filled his heart. Thank you, he whispered against her lips. For showing up that day. For staying when you could have left. For teaching me to see with more than just my eyes. For loving me when I was too broken to deserve it. You always deserved it. Tasha held him close. You just needed to believe that. They stood in the garden, wrapped in each other's arms, two people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances and built something luminous. The journey from that cold wedding day to this moment had been long, filled with challenges and growth and hard-won understanding. But they'd made it together. Through Julian's grief and Tasha's family drama, through business battles and experimental surgeries, through learning to trust and learning to love. They'd built a marriage based on respect and partnership and genuine affection. And now, with Julian's sight restored and their love declared freely, they could finally start the future they'd both secretly dreamed of. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A real partnership between equals who chose each other every single day. Come on, Tasha said, taking Julian's hand. Let's go inside. I want you to really see our home. Our life. Everything we built together. Everything we'll keep building, Julian corrected. This isn't an ending, Tasha. It's a beginning. They walked hand in hand back to the mansion, their home, their haven. Behind them, the garden bloomed in the darkness, beautiful even when no one was watching. Ahead, the house glowed with warm light, welcoming them home. And between them, love grew stronger with every step. Not despite the challenges they'd faced but because of them. Not in spite of how they'd started, but because they'd transformed that difficult beginning into something neither had expected. Something real. Something lasting. Something worth every moment of fear and uncertainty and growth. They'd mistakenly married as strangers. But they